Well, hello everybody. Steve the Amateur Historian back with you with no idea how I'm going to continue going this way. I guess I just crossed the street. That's pretty easy. Anyway, guys, Steve the Amateur Historian here with another case for you in my Historic Murders of Portland series. For this one, I'm taking you back to 1913, and if all this stuff will cooperate, will also take me to Southwest 1st Avenue and Jefferson Street. God, this was flat land a couple months ago when I did a video over here. Not anymore. That's the biggest issue. There's so much construction going on, and there's always construction going on in this area, that I hope you'll be able to hear a word I say. But if you can't, I guess it kind of makes sense for this particular video, because this is a case where it seems like there either wasn't a lot of information, or despite the fact that it was a murder case, there didn't really seem to be a lot of investment on the part of newspaper people to bring us all the details as they came in, because it seems this was a case that was immediately shrouded in mystery, and after a couple of days it was just kind of left that way. And it may be because it was one of those cases where initially you have the victim. You think, well, this person's the murder victim, so of course they're, the one we feel sorry for. But as time went by, the idea started getting pushed that maybe the victim wasn't as innocent in all this as we'd be led to think. It's one of those cases where it's like you can't know everything on the outset, and so it seems the possibility, because you can't put this past newspapers, especially back in the day. Talk about the glory days of yellow journalism, that they may have determined that this guy was kind of a jerk-off, and because of that they decided, you know what, we'll just let this case go. Alright, so this is 1st and Jefferson, and it's very loud. I'm going to try to find the best spot possible. Fortunately, with construction all around me, there are a few. I could pretty much stand on any given corner here and be hopefully safe from falling debris. Okay, so this case comes from January 1913. And it seems, again, critiquing the newspaper people, this case was so scatterbrained, or either just people cared so little about getting the details. I mean, so many of these old cases from the first 10, 20 years of the 20th century, like 1900 to 1910, a lot of the articles, titles for cases like this were literally just called Another Portland Murder. It's like murders were happening so often in Portland, which this was, still primarily, most of Portland was here still. Till around the turn of the century. We'd started expanding east, but not that much. And they call the articles Another Portland Murder. Just like, another Portland murder happened last night. Even 100 years ago, people were pretty desensitized to it. And in this particular case, the newspaper reporters and whatnot, the investigative reporters, were so uninvested, seemingly in this case, that the murder victim in this story, which his murder happened here at 1st and Jefferson, they never even got his first name. Not only that, there are literally, I count them, 4 different names given to this guy. And there weren't a lot of newspaper articles. It's not like I had 100 different articles, so every now and then someone got it wrong. I am going with the notion that the individual that was killed in this case was named G. Marty. G being, the initial for his first name. But I saw reports that said he was G.A. Marty, G.F. Marty, G.J. Marty, or G.H. Marty. Now, considering this is a case from 1913, I'm 90% sure the G means his first name was George, because it seems everybody who existed in America around 1913 was either named George, William, or Henry. And sometimes maybe a combination of all three of those names. But G. Marty, because I don't know which initial is his actual middle name, G. Marty is walking down the street. Apparently he's walking south on 1st Street. So he's coming from this direction, and he's walking towards the intersection of Jefferson when he encounters a woman there who reportedly is kind of accosting him. Maybe she's a prostitute, maybe she's a lonely girl looking for a guy who's willing to spend a couple money at the local saloon on her, who knows exactly. And while these two are conversing, and again, the initial kind of presumption is that this is a woman trying to get something out of him and he's just a guy going about his life, two men come out of nowhere and start attacking G. Marty right here at this intersection. And they literally beat him to death. He died as a result of this beating. I'm sorry, I have to step away from the intersection where it all happened. There's so much construction going on. I don't even know how well you can hear me. So, yeah, this is January 11th, 1913. And the initial reports, it even says so in the newspaper, because, the newspapers have to be very tongue-in-cheek about their behavior. And it's expressed that... sorry, I'm having to let a guy pull into the parking lot in front of me. How you doing? It says in the newspapers initially that this woman approaches G. Marty and starts, literally in quotes, getting friendly with him. So, again, trying to hook up with him, trying to get him to spend some money on her, who knows? And he apparently resists her, like, no, I'm not interested, and these two guys come up and start just attacking him. It's unexpected. He gets one blow, knocks him to the ground, and they start beating him primarily in the head region. And he actually walks away from it initially. He goes home, and a little while after he gets home, he starts complaining of head pain. And they take him to the hospital, and 4 days later, January 15th, he passes away as a result of the trauma he'd experienced. So again, the initial... God, it's so much quieter over here. The initial story is that, you want to believe this woman walks up to this guy. She's got a couple of toughs with her. So, it's kind of like, I'm going to go up to this guy and see what I can do, but if he doesn't play ball, you guys come up there and rough him up. They're almost like his pimps, it seems. So that's kind of that's the initial story being presented, is that this guy was accosted and then beaten to death. And therefore... the victim of a brutal beating. But then a few witnesses start coming out that rather imply that maybe things didn't quite go that way. These witnesses, there's at least one or two, said that they saw G. Marty at least insulting the woman. And so this question started to arise of who was accosting who. Did she actually go up to him and bother him, or was she passing by and he started bothering her? It's hard to say, because Marty was beaten to death, so he was not around to tell his side of the story. But according to the woman, whose name was Marie Rosato, according to one newspaper article, she got off work and went to a theater at 1st and Madison, which is this intersection right here. So back in 1913, at one part of the intersection, there was a movie theater right here. And she says it's a little bit odd. I don't know, maybe this was the norm back then, because she says she went to the theater after she got off work to watch something, but then after like an hour just kind of wandered out. So maybe she got bored, but it almost seems like she was just like, oh, I went to the movies, and then just kind of, oh, I ended up a block down the road getting accosted. I don't really know. But she claims that she left the movie house here, went 1 block south, which takes you back to Jefferson and First, where the murder occurred. And her claim is that Marty approached her and began accosting her. The explanation then given is that these weren't two toughs looking to help their woman pull a scam on a, random guy walking through the city, but rather these were two guys that saw G. Marty roughing up Marie Rosado, and they came to her defense. And it's still very much like this today, in our culture, but especially you go back 100 years, if you were a man roughing up a woman and another man saw it, they didn't take kindly to that. But then, of course, men were allowed to beat their wives all the time, but if you saw another man beating another woman, all of a sudden hypocrisy reigns. It's like, that is unacceptable, you never hit a woman. So the idea is these guys came to Marie Rosado's aid, but they came a little too rough, and they just beat this guy so bad that he died of head trauma, literally beaten to death. So which story is right? I don't know. I'm really suspicious of Miss Rosado's story. Obviously she has a story because she's still alive, but I don't know. There's reasons to believe either side. If G. Marty accosted her, there were a lot of men like that back then. If she was accosting him, looking for a guy to spend some money on her, show her a good time, there was a lot of women in the city like that then too. And when all is said and done, the case seems to linger on as a cold case. It just, all the articles I found, they just kind of tapered off. The last one I found discussed essentially what the coroner's verdict was on the situation, which they didn't really cast any light on anything. They didn't really tell us anything we didn't already know. They essentially said that G. Marty died as a result of the head trauma he received. Yeah, wow, thanks for that little piece of information. And that they couldn't determine who the assailants were or if the assault was justified. Which that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of where we're all just left in this case. I found no other articles about Marie Rosado or G. Marty, whether it was GA, GF, GH, GG, I don't know. That's really where we're left now. 106 years later. There was no resolution. And again, maybe authorities, they have a lot of other crime to deal with in this city. And, the possibility is they may have just said, it seems like this guy was maybe a scumbag, so the hell with it. We'll just say he was a scumbag. He maybe got what he deserved, and we'll just let it lie until somebody gets bothered by it and says, hey, find a resolution to this crime. And it seems like nobody got mad enough for that to actually happen. So it lingers on, presumably as an unsolved cold case murder from 1913. And that's it. That's all I was able to find on this case. But I thought it was really interesting, even with the lack of information and the lack of a real name. I'm going with George Marty because that makes the most sense for that time. And it fits, it was so seemingly lacklusterly reported on that it makes sense that there was no resolution in the end. It was just, it seemed a random little accosting, if accosting is it's a word, that happened just on another street corner in the city. And it led to death, an unresolved death at that. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Kind of a simple, small little case, but definitely interesting, and a story from the deep, dark heart of downtown Portland. And till next time, you know what to do. Remember to like, share, subscribe, please. Hit up my Patreon if you want to help me out that way. And until the next episode, guys, this has been Steve the Amateur Historian with another episode of Historic Murders of Portland.